Thanks, guys. Thanks, Amanda and Stacy and the whole Catalyst team. I'm super happy to be here, so thanks for having me. I want to start today by telling you guys about the email that changed my life. When I was 24, I applied to go to a TED conference, and through some miracle, I was accepted, and was just, at the time, I thought this was like the most gangster thing that could ever happen. I was so excited about it, and in the lead up to it, they sent out a message to all the folks that were going to say, hey, is anyone interested in giving a short, informal talk to the other attendees in the days before the conference actually starts? And I thought, yeah, I mean, like, that sounds kind of cool. So I submitted a little proposal with some ideas, and I didn't hear back, which is actually super understandable, because at the time, I had no business getting up on stage in front of people to share anything, despite my quarter-century of wisdom and my impressive speaking resume that included like one open mic night at a bar. So fine, it's cool, I'm still excited to go. And 2 days before I get on the plane to go to the conference is when I receive this email. And it tells me when I need to report for hair and makeup for my talk on the main stage during the actual conference. And I'm sitting in my cube at work, and I'm looking around like, am I getting punked? Like, this guy? Really? Like, this has to be a mistake. And I literally replied, I'm like, maybe this is an error. I'm not sure you meant to send this to me, but if you did, I'm not even sure what you want me to talk about. Like, please advise. And I didn't hear back. So I was like, all right, I guess this is happening, right? So I put my head down and started working on it. I was writing on the plane. I downloaded the little stopwatch app on my computer, and I'm like practicing in my hotel room. And on the opening day of this conference, I got to get up on stage and share my idea worth spreading. And that was awesome. I was in way over my head. Like, I'm sharing the stage with some real badasses. Like, the dude who went on after me is this guy, Tony Hsieh, who's the CEO of Zappos, like a real big deal. And it was just such a cool opportunity for me, not the least of which because later at the conference, I met this guy named Rafe. And he recognized me from my talk and wanted to come and like discuss some of these topics more. And we became friends and hung out after the conference. And a few months later, I got an email from him. And the subject was, what do you, Bill Clinton, Tiki Barber, and Kristen Bell have in common? I was like, I don't know. I will open this email. And he says, well, I don't know either, but if you can get past the fact that registration's already closed, you should try to go to this conference called Summit Series. I've already talked to the curator, told him you're cool, he's expecting your call. So I call this guy named Jeff, and I somehow convince him to extend me an invitation to go to this conference, which turns out to be an invitation into this really cool network of other young entrepreneurs and change makers and leaders. And it's really that I can credit as the source of a lot of the ways I've been able to like take my career to the next level. I started a tech company with my business partner who I met through Summit. I am a tech columnist, and I'm published a couple of places through people that I met at Summit. And those are just two examples of the myriad ways that people I've met subsequently have challenged me and inspired me and opened doors for me and given me opportunities to do things like stand on this stage with you guys here tonight. And it's all because of that email. And to this day, I don't know if that was an actual mistake or if someone just like did me a solid and took a risk on me. But it really did change the course of what happened in my life. And I tell you this long story not as some kind of like, I don't know, false modesty. I don't want to downplay the role I actually played in getting where I am. Like, I worked hard. And I like to think that I'm an intelligent and well-rounded person. But I tell you this story because it calls out a lie. A lie that we collectively tell that is so deeply ingrained in the fabric of our cultural storytelling that we don't even know that it's a lie anymore. And the lie is this: that being smart and working hard are all that it takes for success. And when I say success, I don't mean like that 15 minutes of fame kind of success. Like, we can all probably think of people who are not particularly smart or hardworking, who have managed to become these little blips in our like collective conscious. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like deep and meaningful impact. where you are building a company or creating a community and changing lives, like the kind of stuff that's happening here in downtown Vegas every day. And that kind of change is a lot like a chemical reaction, right? Like, you can put being smart and working hard into a test tube and swirl it around, but it's not going to turn into success. What you need is that X factor, right? That secret ingredient that, when combined with intelligence and diligence, will turn it into something bigger. To borrow a term from chemistry, you need a catalyst, right? And that catalyst can take different forms. Maybe you got lucky. Maybe you were in the right place at the right time. But more often than not, it was a person. A person who took a chance on you, who made an introduction for you, who took a risk on you, who gave you your big break. But we don't like to tell that story. You know, instead, we perpetuate this myth that success is this hard-fought solo battle, and that's just reinforced from the stories we hear from successful people who, when asked, how did you get where you are, will frequently rely on those tired old platitudes, right? That are, followed my dreams and nose to the grindstone and put in the time and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And don't get me wrong, that's all super important. But it paints this picture that success is something you can get just through sheer force of will, right? That it's a linear progression from nobody to somebody with just a steady stream of hard work and being smart in between. And that's a heroic story. But I don't think it's the whole story. In fact, I'd venture to guess that behind every success story, there's another story about that catalyst that came into someone's life and created an inflection point that fundamentally changed their path. So I'm here tonight to advocate for authentic storytelling, for telling the truth behind how our lives got to be where they are and how important that is for inspiring others. So I just want to first explore, like, why is it that we don't want to tell these stories, right? Like, I think it probably has something to do with, we love the rags to riches. We love the self-made man. It's very American, independent, and self-reliant, and that's great. But the problem is that it implies that anyone who receives help is perhaps weak or undeserving, right? We abhor handouts. We don't like nepotism. And so we end up with this very binary understanding of merit and serendipity, where sometimes we don't think they can coexist. If you didn't do it on your own, then you didn't earn it. The idea that someone got lucky can elicit like resentment. So if your real story doesn't really live up to these heroic cultural expectations, it can be really vulnerable to share the truth. And so we suppress that vulnerability. And that can be really damaging for ourselves. The Harvard Business Review did a really, really good piece in 2005 called The Dangers of Feeling Like a Fake, that talked about an affliction they see with a lot of high-performing people where they secretly feel like they don't belong where they are, like they snuck their way in, and any moment people are going to find out they didn't really earn it. And that can have some really serious emotional repercussions. Similarly, Bre.ad gave a really good TED Talk a few years ago called The Power of Vulnerability, where she talks about how numbing vulnerability isn't actually possible without numbing other things. So we end up numbing joy, we numb gratitude, we numb happiness. And that's really negative for us. But I think the real problem is with the external repercussions of doing that. Because what happens is we all end up comparing our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. And when we say that being smart and working hard are all you need for success, what we actually end up saying is, if you're not successful, you must not be that smart. You must not be working hard. And that can be really demotivating for people who are even the smartest and hardest working among us. So for example, earlier this week, I heard an artist manager proclaim that there are no great undiscovered bands left in the world, because if they were great, people would have flocked already. And like, that's really silly, right? I'm sure everyone in this room can think of a really cool band that hasn't been discovered yet. Or if you can't, then you know an awesome entrepreneur who hasn't yet raised money. And if you can't think of that, I think everyone in this room knows of a sick city that isn't yet on the map, but maybe deserves to be. And that's why I think we need to tell these stories, to inspire the folks that have the potential to keep pursuing that. And so I want to tell you one more story tonight, and it's about a guy named Don. He graduated with honors from the US Naval Academy, and then as a platoon commander, did tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. No one in this room is going to tell me that he is not smart or that he does not work hard. But when he left the military and went to graduate school, he decided that he kind of wanted to go into tech, but with a military resume, he didn't really know how to break in. So he went and met with the career services group at school and met with this woman named Uta, who listened to his situation, stood up from her desk, walked to her bookcase, plucked out a binder, and pulled a resume of an alum from a couple years before, who also had a military experience and was now at Google. She said, talk to this guy, he can help you. And so Don went and had a beer with this guy. And that guy ended up helping him get his first internship at Google, which Don then turned into a full-time position working on really cool products like Google Checkout. And then he went over to Facebook, worked there for like 5 years, became VP of online operations. Now he heads up operations at Pinterest. He oversees over 100 people at one of like the hottest and fastest growing companies in Silicon Valley. This guy is smart. He worked his butt off, but even he will tell you he would not be where he is if Uta hadn't handed him that resume. So it's not that he didn't earn it. He did. Uta opened that door, and he still had to walk through it. So I'm leaving you guys with 2 calls to action tonight. The first is jump at those opportunities. Say yes to the meeting. Be open to serendipity because you never know when that catalyst is going to fall into your lap. And then 2, I just want to emphasize that modesty and humility and vulnerability will go so far in inspiring other people. So please, share your stories, your real stories about the time that you got help or you got lucky. Because if we collectively tell those true stories, there is no bound to the dreams that we can have for our cities and our communities and for ourselves. Thank you.
Oh, 3 questions.
Oh,
and repeat the question.
Oh, yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Can you name some moments or people in your lives who kind of had that trajectory, kind of people who have made you have like a totally different trajectory in life?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll tell you like so the question was if I could name some other people that I could kind of helped change the trajectory of my life beyond that first email. Yeah, for sure. So the editor-in-chief of the publication the main publication I write for, just called the Daily Muse, when they first launched, she wrote an op-ed in the Huffington Post, and I thought it was awesome. I was like on board. I like want to be a part of this publication, and so I tweeted to her and just said like, hey, love what you guys are doing, let me know how I can help. And she writes back and is like, cool, sounds good. And then a couple hours later, she tweets back to me and is like, hey, so I actually just wasted like 3 hours on your blog and would love to talk to you more about potentially writing for us. And so that was just like a really cool serendipitous moment where I had never thought about having a column or like writing regularly, and just got super lucky that she wanted to offer me that opportunity. And now I've been able to grow with that organization and expand my own writing and kind of thought leadership on those topics. Oh.
So what sorts of things do you do to maintain your humility and to reconnect with your vulnerability as you continue to succeed?
So the question was, what do I do to maintain my humility and connect with my vulnerability? I'm certainly not here to say that like I'm some shining example. I mean, I think all of us, you're working in a cultural context that maybe doesn't always want you to go there. So it's something that I continue to try to work on. I went to business school. I get questions a lot like, really? Is an MBA that valuable? Like, what did you learn? And I don't know if this is unique to the program I went to. I went to Stanford. It was awesome. And I'd say the main thing I learned there was that sharing vulnerability is the quickest way to build intimacy. So I do really try when I'm first talking to people to like answer those questions honestly. When people ask like how you got where you got, like I'm not going to tell you like, well, like I invented this thing in my basement and then won a Nobel Prize and then everybody wanted me. Like a lot of it is like fake it till you make it, like hustle a little bit, just get to know people and ferret out opportunities where there are, and just being honest with people about how that happened, and then trying to help other people too, right? Realizing that you got to pay it forward and to kind of make that a reality for others. Cool. Thanks, guys.